This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke: The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. This is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. Joining me now is the Chief Executive Officer of Colonial Metals Group, Paul Stone. Now, Paul Stone is an interesting cat. After leaving the Air Force, Paul Stone became a broker, then a financial planner. In the mid-'90s, he's working at a career he envisioned for the future. Paul Stone was, like me, someone who always outworked his peers, researching, studying, questioning, and maintaining perspective as a perpetual student, learning from those who trust his ways and those with new ideas. Paul Stone and I are not related, by the way, but we have become good friends. In fact, Paul gave me a 1 ounce Swiss fine gold ingot that I carry with me everywhere as a good luck charm in my right front pocket. It is something I'm proud to have, symbolic of our friendship. But he has now turned his career towards helping folks who have an interest in protecting what they saved. You know, it's protecting your nest egg, your retirement. And with the markets being as fragile and as potentially unstable as they are, those who decide to protect themselves with precious metals, I think, are doing a pretty smart thing. The thing I like about Paul Stone is he's not just a purveyor of precious metals. He's not just a purveyor of gold. He's a historian of gold. He's a philosopher of gold. I'm proud to have him join us today. Paul, welcome to the show.
Oh, Roger, thank you so much for the glowing words and an interesting way of describing things. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Well, before the election, as you know, President Trump talks a lot about tariffs, and it's clear that he means what he says and says what he means. Now that he's preparing to take office, it's pretty clear that he's going to move ahead. He warned China, Canada, Mexico, if they don't help him seal the border from human invasion and drug trafficking, they would immediately be the first recipients of harsh tariffs on top of what he already has planned. So far, this seems to be working out. The Canadians and the Mexicans signaling a strong willingness to play ball. But even Reuters noted that with the possibility of these tariffs being implemented, to quote them, gold prices rose last Thursday as geopolitical uncertainty and trade war concerns boosted this safe haven demand, with low trading volumes expected in U.S. markets that, of course, were closed. This was just before the Thanksgiving holidays. With the geopolitical risks seeming to me to be elevated, ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, the Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire now appearing to be in place, Israel's contingencies for retaliation, keeping those tensions alive, the overthrow of the Assad regime in Syria, all of those things point to instability. I noticed that Anika Gupta, who is the director of macroeconomics research at Wisdom Tree, pointed all these factors out as a reason that support for gold remains strong. Paul, your analysis of the current situation.
Well, yeah, I mean, the list of threats goes on, and we've become desensitized to the ones that that are at the bottom of the stack that started coming out, around 2007, 2008, post 2008 with the money printing. It's normal for human minds to just kind of think about what they've heard in the last 30 days or so, and certainly in the last week and what they heard this morning. But there is a laundry list of reasons to fear this instability eventually, reverting back to reality, which is, a bit of a reset from where people think these lofty values for things will remain, because it's all inflated. And you can have the headlines du jour that strike fear in our hearts, but it's the fundamentals, the boring mathematics that really makes the case for me, and that is the U.S. economy does not create enough revenue to cover its costs. And if Bob Jones couldn't handle that, then Bob Jones is taking on debt. If Paul Stone can't handle that, he's taking on debt. Eventually, no one's going to give me any more debt because I can't pay the debt back, and now I'm living under a bridge. That's mathematics. That's pure, economic physics that any of us can understand. I like to take a farmer's approach to looking at this. So if the constant is going to be that the bills get bigger every year and the government has to print more money to pay its bills every year, then, how long can that go on? Well, let's turn the conversation to resources. Isn't money, if you think of money as financial energy, it's an energy, right? It lights up the gas station pump because you're going to spend some before you get your gas. So it's an energy that causes other energies to happen. It causes us to get out of bed in the morning, causes us to go to work, causes us to eat. So when you look at the resource of the dollar itself, it used to be an untapped resource. It was worth 100 pennies for hundreds of years. Until the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, it suddenly wasn't worth 100 pennies anymore because a committee started monkeying around with the settings. In the year 2000, the dollar was worth 56 cents. Today, it's worth 2.7 cents. And I'm looking around for an updated value on what it is after the last year or so of money printing, creating $1 trillion in new money, not debt, new money out of thin air every 100 days. The pace is quickening. So we're racing to the bottom where that dollar resource eventually reads half a penny, a tenth of a penny. And when that happens, the grand economists of the world describe hyperinflation, which is a physical reaction to a currency being ultimately absolutely worthless, that no man can put out. No one can put out that fire. And given an example of what hyperinflation would be like, the Fed would have to crank rates up to 40%. Not 4 or 5 or 6 or even 18 when Carter was around, but 40%. You would literally completely suffocate economic activity inside your economy to get that fire out of hyperinflation. So we can look at these headlines, but they're really just more confirmation that they're symptoms of a grand failure. And that is the leadership of Washington decided it wouldn't come to the podium and tell us Americans the truth early on when this was more of a bruise than missing a leg or an arm, or being on life support as we are now since 2008. That's what that's about. You look for these constants. Will the government really ever come to the podium and tell us the truth? They can't print the money for Social Security anymore. Could they ever come with that truth? Because you can't. Because it's killing the resource that all of us and a lot of the world rely on for our earnings and for our compensation and for our savings.
Folks, we're talking to Paul Stone, the Chief Executive Officer of the Colonials Metals Group. They're the folks that I trust when it comes to acquiring precious metals like gold and silver. When we come back, we're going to talk about why I don't think folks should be swept up in the euphoria of Donald Trump's election and not protect their retirement with gold. We'll be right back with more of Paul Stone in just a moment.
This is The Roger Stone Show.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Lights, camera, innovation. Walt Disney Studios chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform the movie-making process. Together, we kept a remote production hub in Hawaii in sync with a team in California to bring Lilo and Stitch to theaters this summer. This is picture-perfect collaboration. This is Walt Disney Studios with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. Now, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back with breaking news. President Jimmy Carter has passed away at age 100. I met President Carter when he debated my boss, Governor Ronald Reagan, in 1980. He was incredibly kind and polite, knowing that I was working for the other side. I must tell you, Carter was an outsider, much like Trump, much like Reagan. He was not favored to become the Democrat nominee. His administration was swallowed up by the neocons like Brzezinski and others. He was a good man. He was a decent man. He was a good Christian who conducted himself with great dignity in his post-presidential years. Jimmy Carter, may you rest in peace. We return now to Paul Stone, our guest. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Colonial Metals Group. They are the folks I trust when it comes to protecting your retirement by diversifying your portfolio with precious metals like gold and silver. Paul knows that even though I'm an acolyte and a protege of President Richard Nixon, that I believe that closing the gold window, taking America off the gold standard, was probably among his single greatest mistakes. A mistake, by the way, that Treasury Secretary John Connolly talked him into over the objections of the head of the Council of Economic Advisors, Arthur Burns, and one that America is still not totally recovered for. When people ever learn that I'm a Nixonite, they like to bust my chops about closing the gold window, but I heartily agree it was among his greatest mistakes. Now, Paul, I sense almost a euphoria among many Americans about Donald Trump's election. There's a new optimism, a new hope in the air, but that does not mean that this isn't a good time to protect your retirement by acquiring gold and silver.
Well, I would agree. There's an old saying, the best day to plant a fruit tree was 10 years ago, and the second best day is today. And when you look at things that way, it's about perspective. It's about looking at how fast-paced our society is. It's all about what's happening, what's for dinner tonight, what movie we're going to watch, which can't wait to binge watch that Netflix series again. We're just inundated with things to do. The kids, the work, the projects, the deadlines, the this, the that, the this, the that. And we got to slow down a little and say, okay, if I'm about to be retired, and if I am retired, what do I think the next 10 years is going to be like? A lot of times I'll give people an analogy to draw this truth out of themselves. And I'll say, I think the next 4 years might be great, but what if I had a time machine where we could just jump forward 5 years into the future and hope we land in this incredible, wonderful world. And you could bring everyone with you and no one will age, the pets, car, everything will fit into this time machine. But as far as what money you can bring with you, you're either going to bring your retirement savings with you in a briefcase full of cash, or you're going to bring that briefcase and that retirement savings in ounces of gold. Which briefcase would you bring with you 5 years into the future? Most people, almost 99% of the time, said they'll bring the gold. Why? Because they're much more certain that gold will have a great value, the same value, or an even greater value 5 years in the future, and they don't think the dollar would serve them well 5 years from now. So why would you keep your retirement savings in the dollar over the next 5 years? The money printing can't stop. Trump's going to do all kinds of great things, close the border, bully some countries around that have been bullying us, end some stupid wars and skirmishes, maybe make the government run more efficiently again. But, oh, my God, do we remember the base closing efforts probably, 20-something years ago? Well, how long ago was that, Roger? You probably know. 20, 25 years ago, we're going to need to close all these Cold War bases, right? When was that? 2025, like Clinton's term, Bush's term.
Yeah, we talk about it constantly, but it never really happens. I mean, look.
Right, because no one wants the base closed in their town, in their state. Yeah, close all the bases in Wisconsin, just not in Michigan. Now, close all the ones in New Jersey, just not in New York. So when it comes to cuts, every one of those elected officials thinks they have to go home and sing some song of success every single time so they can keep their seat when it's up for re-election. And that is a flaw. That's a massive design flaw. So we say we want to cut. Okay, let's look at it. The debt's $1 trillion a year. The military's $1 trillion a year. That's $2 trillion. Social Security's $1.5 trillion. Okay, so now you're at $3.5 trillion. And Medicare and Medicaid is $1.5 trillion. So now you're at $5. That's $5 trillion every year, and it gets bigger every year. That's what I mean. If people could start thinking about, well, is gold and silver irrelevant now? Probably not, because the money printing isn't going to stop, because the bills aren't going to stop getting bigger. We talk about Social Security. It's like, well, when's it going to go defunct? When they can't print any more money to pay for it. When that was invented, there were 44 workers for a retiree. Today, there's 3 workers for a retiree. There's nowhere near enough money being kicked into that account to cover all the retirees. It's flipped. It's upside down. And I'm not against people working their whole lives and getting something that was promised to them. What I'm against is continuing to rely on a government that fails to deliver on promises because they have no idea what they should be doing, evidenced by where we're at today. And if you want to continue to trust the dollar that they're abusing in Washington and Wall Street to pay their bills and fuel their Learjets and make all these successes and all these billionaires, you want to continue to trust that, I think you're going to be crying a river of woe one day.
Yeah, look, we have to hope that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and their Doge effort to cut wasteful spending is successful. But I would remind you, President Ronald Reagan had the Grace Commission, which did the same job, came up with a group of tremendous recommendations where billions could be saved. Of course, nothing actually happened. Now is the time to protect your retirement. Please go to freegoldguide.com, freegoldguide.com. If today's conversation stimulated you, the folks I trust are the folks at colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone. Check it out. I think you will be very glad you did. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today on the Roger Stone Show. I wanted people to understand, not to get wrapped into this euphoria. Now is the perfect time to protect their retirement. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Mr. Roger Stone, you're extraordinary. Thanks for having me again.
street.